It's recorded. Right, morning, thanks for coming. If you've been to one of these, you know we link up halfway between us and Leeds. Just going to have a brief run through, just quickly, just to give you a couple bits. So, on the agenda today, 2 presentations from us here in London and 2 from us in Leeds. This is our team, as you can see, it is rather large. This is all the teams in London and in Leeds. If you want to know who any of them are, come talk to me afterwards. I'll send you a poster on an email. It's got all of our pictures, all of our names, all of our job titles, so you might be able to make some sense of this crowd. One new team member to talk about at the moment, that's Alex, who's an interaction designer based up in Leeds. So if you're listening, please give a big round of applause.
Young blood.
So just to run through the sprint goals from the London teams this sprint. For the CNGP and Simple Conditions teams, we're identifying improvements to publishing tools based on some user feedback. Finish the first draft for all of our Simple Conditions. Write content for See Your GP conditions and understand whether the beta pages are meeting user needs. 2 of those done, the top 2. Bottom 2 into the backlog to be tackled soon. Most importantly though, we have published 4 shiny new pages. Earwax, sore throat, indigestion and insect bites are all live on beta.nhs.uk. Go and check them out in all of their loveliness. Woo! For the register with the GP team, thank you for that. The register with the GP team were trying to complete a user email sketch session, get a survey and blog out on a health questionnaire, prototype version 1.1, and get some user needs back into the master spreadsheet after tidying them up. They achieved 3 out of 4, just the survey and the blog back into the backlog to be done soon. That's it with the intro. Thanks for listening, and over to Don. He's going to talk about publishing content.
I'm Don, one of the developers on NHS.UK. So, some of you may have seen variations of this in the past, but this is kind of what we're running right now for the pages on beta. So, we've got a page on NHS.UK, and it's getting content from structured files, which are hosted in the same place, so they're all on GitHub right now. But we've kind of separated the presentation and the content. So we've kind of constructed this layer where we want to digest the information in a certain way. So what we're moving to, so this allows us to kind of move to the next step, which is also supporting a content store of our publishing tools. We started with Wagtail for this, and it gives us a good base for a lot of things like workflow, sharing and authentication. And so the next step we're looking at is when you hit page on beta, it will first try and get that content from Wagtail, and if it can't, it will fall back to files that we've already got and that we know we can work with. Working with files allowed us to kind of move a little bit quicker with what we wanted to be consuming and then also presenting. And the next step is going to be to kind of transition out the files and then all of the content is coming from my publishing tool. So the next step is just to show you that. So everyone's face should be really excited. Right, so on the Stomachache page, it's just running off my machine at the moment to sort of mimic how it will work. But if I go to one of the files that's currently powering some of our content, so this is the Stomachache content in Markdown format. And if I change this to I save that and then go back to this. Well, it's already refreshed for me. You can see that this content is it's getting this from the file system right now. I can kind of see that from this line, telling me it's coming from the file system. But if I go into the whitetail thing that we've also linked up to this instance, and as you can see here at the top, Stomachake is in a draft state, so it's not published, which is why it's falling back and looking at the file system. So if I go in here and publish this, go back to that page. This will now show the original content, and then I can also go back in and make an edit to that. And yes, that's a seamless transition into Tara, who's going to be talking about some of the research we've done on whitetail.
Hello, I'm Tara. I'm a user researcher on NHS.UK. And last week I spent a day working with Don, Tion and Marco doing some pop-up user research on the new publishing platform. And by pop-up user research, I mean something that was very important. We ran some half-an-hour sessions. We asked content designers who were primarily working on teams, but we really wanted to kind of begin to explore the opportunities for the new publishing platform and also what we could do to kind of make it as optimal as possible. So we were looking at two things. We were looking at the publishing editing workflow. So this is before we started looking at the website itself. And I really wanted to explore what the existing workflow is to establish a kind of context of use. So we have a real sense of what content editors, what content designers actually trying to do, big task outcomes. And then we looked at Wagtail itself, for example, test environment. We had a set of tasks that we asked users to go through. And so the two of those were kind of powerful in giving us a kind of fairly rounded picture of how things were working. But this is one of the outputs from the kind of workflow bit of the user research. So, I mean, I literally kind of, as I got someone to describe the workflow, so the kind of journey of publishing a new piece of content, I could have sketched out what that looked like. And as you can see, firstly, there's a lot of kind of sources that go into the creation of content, and there's a lot of iteration, there's a lot of kind of going through, and that's, often sort of second pair of eyes on content before it finally goes live. So that was just one example. And we spoke to content designers who are both working with beta teams, so are familiar with a kind of slightly different process, as well as content designers who come from the live team, so been working in the way that the majority of content designers and editors are working. And these are the sort of high-level kind of findings from just that session, that part of the session, where we were trying to understand more about the opportunities for the new publishing platform from a kind of broader context abuse perspective. So one of the things that came out really strongly is that the ability to be able to carry out the content print or get clinician kind of sign off with a preview version of the content, so a version of the content that looks like it would to a user rather than content in a Google Doc, would make the whole process a lot more efficient and faster. So often what we're seeing is clinicians are feeding back on stuff that actually is to do with how the visual flow of information is presented. The stuff that you see once a page has been formatted correctly and looks like when it was live, but you lose all of that context when you're showing somebody a Word doc or a Google Doc. So being able to support that would make the kind of delivery of content simpler and faster. We know that there is a need to create an audit trail with all the kind of content decisions and catalogue sources, catalogue user needs, and that needs to be accessible. I mean, years down the line that you can go back So being able to kind of bundle that up and package it so it stays with kind of where the content is another opportunity. And then there was something interesting about preserving formatting between platforms. So the live team, saying content design that we spoke to is that at the moment the process involves having to remove all the formatting, paste stuff into something like Notepad before you can then upload it to SharePoint. So steps like that are necessarily kind of add to the overall process. Okay, and then we actually changed users Whitetail, and we set the test environment, and we got users to carry out kind of 3 tasks that we thought actually replicated the kind of things that people tried to do. So one of them was publishing some new content. So we asked users to publish some cake content. We had that in a separate Google Doc. We asked users to edit the piece of the live content by changing the image. We asked the users that were speaking to the content designers to approve a piece of content that was awaiting moderation. I've got a video clip next week. It's really exciting. I hope it works. From some of the sessions, which hopefully gives you a quick overview of the kind of issues that we were seeing.
Before me, so I'm going to click on that, and that's nothing happens.
See if it's that kind of temporary SharePoint thing.
Yes.
What we expected to happen.
So this could happen. What happens when I do this?
Nothing about the arrows. Yeah, so the arrows don't come at the end of the carefully how you have the rest of the memory content that's in the Google Doc.
No, doesn't seem clear to me. I'd be trying. I would expect the title and a main box or maybe start writing the content name to be there under the content tab. And if I'm missing something obvious, like I haven't scrolled down yet. Cool header. Doesn't particularly mean much to me if I don't know why that's there or whether I should be clicking that or not.
So if you wanted to add one of the content, how would you do that here?
Based on the illustration, I would click markdown, but the word markdown doesn't mean anything to me.
Okay.
It just seems to be the only thing that you'd be click the arrow, I suppose, and see what that does, see if it drops down, but this X doesn't, don't click.
So I know the audio is a bit quiet. I'm Cedric swearing at me, and he's not here, so I'm here waiting to. But that gives you a sense of slides.
Me, so I'm
Yeah, I think I've lost.
going to click on that.
No,
Nothing happening.
I've lost the presentation.
Yeah, it's about that.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. All right. So it gives you a flavour of the kind of issues that we've seen. So we sort of on the same day we've been taking notes. We went and I did some analysis. We were kind of seeing things primarily to do with language, and that includes things like the visual language. So you saw in that video there was a lot of confusion around the kind of chevron, and assuming that they could click on it and it would drop down into something. But there was also confusion around kind of the actual kind of labeling of words and how intuitive and clear they were. There were a bunch of issues around navigation, and so just being able to find the thing that you needed to find so that you could do what you were trying to do. And then there were issues around the actual kind of workflow itself, so kind of how easily it was to go from one part of Whitetail to another so that you can continue the actual task that you are trying to accomplish. So on the basis of finding exchanges, one of the really exciting things and really lovely things about working with the development team was that straight away we knew that there was a whole bunch of things that we could go away and fix and make better immediately. And so that's exactly what Domitian and Marco have been doing. So this kind of shows you a few of the things that have been changed. So first we tested this navigation here. It wasn't clear kind of where users could go and how they could find kind of pages that they wanted to work on. And a lot of that was just to do with the way that things were worded. So for example, Explorer, they couldn't get back to the overall kind of dashboard. So the first page that they see when they log in, you can get to it by actually clicking on the website, but that wasn't clear. And so changes that we've already made is changing the language of that sort of folder, creating a link for the dashboard. So users can see kind of the overall picture of kind of, you know, what they have to moderate and what pages they have. Confusing kind of visual kind of language, we kind of took out the kind of chevron because it doesn't actually do anything. I think on here, one of the things that we saw, because on the kind of version that we tested, we have the kind of saved draft preview, and also because of the way the page is designed. So before you open out a particular kind of section where you want to add content, there are these kind of sort of horizontal kind of blocks that don't necessarily communicate. There is more to scroll down. So we actually had users who didn't realise that scroll down and do more things. And so by kind of removing these, we've hopefully kind of created kind of more of a visual prompt that you know, there are things to do if you scroll down very much. So that's just a snapshot of what we've been doing since kind of Wednesday when we actually did the research. I think we'd really like to continue making changes and test the ones that we've already made. It feels really important that, you know, some of the language that we've changed, that we can validate that again. So we'd like to keep on iterating and base that kind of on user research. So one of the things that I'm very grateful for our volunteers can take part in user research to help us kind of continue to improve things. And we're also aware that we were testing with quite a limited kind of test environment. We didn't have 80,000 pieces of content in it. And we know that user things would be, you know, probably quite different. So we're aware too that there are opportunities and a need to continue testing this month. Okay. And I think we're handing over to you.
Thank you, Tara. There you go. Users are not just citizens, they are publishers too. So, user-centered iterative design for publishers, which is very important. Right. The seamless text switchover. So close. Where's that not work? Can I have that again? Let's try this one. Oh, it has worked. I'll stop. Wait. Over to the leads.
Okay, can you hear us okay down in London?
Yeah.
Turn
it up on
I'm just making
the
this big. What's that? Hey?
Top right, near everyone's faces.
Oh yeah. Right, sorry about that. Okay, hi, I'm Dominic Hamilton. I'm a delivery manager here in Leeds, working on connecting the services. Just a quick run through of our sprint goals for the last 2 weeks. We've been working on improving the capability of our app that's currently in beta. One of the things was to do the data extract retrieval to API, and that's been deployed. And we're doing some rebuild of the ETL process. We also did some research in previous sprints, and we've we want to make some changes to the pharmacy finder, and we've started making those changes. We've also started working on iterating the GP journey prototype, and Sai's going to do a presentation on that today. And given the time of year, we wanted to take the opportunity to run a survey on GP and pharmacy pages. So with the thanks of Gemma and the research team in London, we've created some questions ready for the survey that we're going to hopefully do in the next sprint. and we've also started mapping the places, mapping places to care they offer, which Nick's going to do a bit about today. So I'm going to hand straight over to Si, who's going to do a bit about GP booking walkthrough.
Cheers. Oh, yo. So I'm a late stand-in. I'm not feeling very well, so ho and all that. It's a reminder I need to do that. Right. I'm just going to take you through the prototype as it is at the moment. We've done a lot of we're doing what we sort of call like pulling a lot of strings together at the moment in the Connecting to Services team. We've had some very distinct stuff where we've been looking at pharmacy journeys, as we call it, and GP journeys, and we're starting to stitch everything together into a mass. Sometimes it feels it can be massive. I don't know if this might break, so I'm like a bit of a stand-in on this case. I did a rollout about half an hour ago, so if this breaks, I'm sorry, but you know that's the way we work around here. We've sort of pulled together, giving people an idea of like journeys that people go through. It's quite easy to just kind of say people come to NHS.UK and they get on with stuff. The world's not like that. We need to think a bit more outside of that. What are people doing in the real world, you know, contextually and stuff like that. Even using the word Google search on here. I spent some time last week with a team of 5 people, and 3 of them didn't use Google out of principle. They used DuckDuckGo. So little things like that need to like think a little bit, look sideways outside of what we're doing at the moment. This stuff here is some journeys we just sort of got down yesterday to give you an idea of people might type pharmacies into Google. You all know what Google search page looks like, don't you? Yeah? Everyone's been to Google. They use DuckDuckGo, and that's the only thing you ever used. Type pharmacies into Google search. You click search. You'll go to a Google results page. Don't worry, we'll get this styled up in the next sprint. I told you it was like in the middle of something. There's a link there that goes through to NHS.UK, gives you some information about pharmacies. We'll give people a page that's got some pharmacy stuff in there. We haven't got that far yet. We'll get onto that. Find a pharmacy. Yeah, this is the service I think a few of you will have known from the past few months. We started looking at things like use my current location. Obviously, it's broken because this is a bit in limbo. You type a location in, ding dong dong, pharmacist nearest open leads now. So this is the thing that we've all seen for the past few months. Those of you here for the first time, that's what we've all been seeing for the past few months. Okay, we've also been looking at GP. A lot of stuff around this that we did a few months ago. We're starting to resurrect that stuff and get into that. Also, Matt and Claire are doing some work around register with GP. There's this sort of nice, if it was a Venn diagram, there's this nice bit in the middle where my face is going, but that's where our collaborative work happens. But people will type GP in. They might type a particular GP in. Do we need to put an information page in there that explains to people about GP? Do we have those kind of needs? We talk about how people know about pharmacies, some of the more interesting conversations we've been having recently. Do people understand, like, GPs? What is a GP? Is a GP a building? Is a GP a person? So again, we're going down this sort of thing here where I'll type leads into there, search, and it'll go find GP search find me. Okay, so it's the same thing there. Okay, it's just been rebadged. So things get a bit more interesting is when we look for diabetes. Someone goes to the journey, information about diabetes. Okay, I'm sorry I haven't put all the content on this page. Content Designs of London, I'm sorry. This bit is ripped straight out of your content, which is the idea that see your GP, because that's a clear call to action in the see your GP page. In this situation though, if someone has been thinking, oh, I've read all that content, which I've not shown you, and I think I've got diabetes, what are they likely to do in that situation? Are they likely to pick the phone up straight away and go, I need an appointment right now? Or might they go, I felt like this for a little bit, what's another day or two? Yeah, there's some different mindsets around that. The stuff we'd done around pharmacies before was all about, I want to go and find some help now. So we sort of like developed our journey. So the previous stuff we'd done around see a GP was this whole thing where we want to attach into it. Again, it says warts, I'm sorry. It should say diabetes. But the thing is, we want to get across to people that it's a non-emergency. You may have to wait some time, and the content will be different against diabetes. But it's also highlighting this thing that you must be registered with a GP for this treatment. If you're not registered with a GP, you can register now. Hello, Matt and Claire, there's your little bit. See? Seamless. If you're with that, you can go and book an appointment. So there's this sort of searcher that we've been through before. Type in, maybe it does something in the screen where it displays all the responses. For the sake of demonstration, we'll click continue, and it'll go and take you through to surgeries that are open now. Okay, so what that sets up is the furtherment and the wider spread of what we're going to go on to now. So I think I've set the scene about some of the stuff we're going to do. And are you going to go through all the other services stuff? Yep. No, I think you can do it, can't you? Do you want me to do that? All right. Thanks for that, Nick. Okay, so one of the things that we've also been looking into would be around stomachache. Stomachache's a great example where previously the information page has said, go to a pharmacy. Here you go, here's the page. Find a pharmacy. Okay, this content lifted from the beta pages at the moment. So we've been doing a bit of mapping, which I think Nick's going to go into a bit later. Well, one of the things we found out is that you can go to several places to get your stomachache dealt with. Stomachache isn't a thing we found that people particularly associate with going to a pharmacy, which is what we've been doing before. People have said, oh, I'll go to my GP. And we've also found walk-in centres can help you with stomachache. So what we've kind of looking at is rough as nails design, by the way. This is just kind of like show through some of the mapping we've been doing. Is that a person can go through this. They might not want to go to a pharmacy. They might want to go to a GP. Want to go to a walk-in centre. We'll give it a location. And click search. And then it'll bring back surgeries that are near to you. One thing of this is like we're mixing a few things together, pharmacies and GPs, is that there's a bit of a call to action on here, which we've had before. Do you remember that? But we were a little bit more upfront about that. Is getting people so they can book a GP appointment. One of the things we've gone through is that when we talk to people, people know that they can go to a pharmacy and walk in. But that's the limit of our research. That's the limit of our exposure. What if we met people who don't really know how pharmacies work? And if you put into that things like minor injury units, walk-in centres, kind of ironically named because you can't really walk into most of them. You have to make an appointment in advance. Minor injury units, all these sort of things. Do we have to kind of get across the idea of how people access these on this results page goes, which thing we're going to look at in the next sprint. Book a GP appointment though, again, similar sort of thing. It's carrying through the name. Like I said, it's I didn't really want to show this because it's a bit pieces here and there. But it's the setting people up that the GP system that for this surgery, we can link straight through to that quite quickly by going through the system. As long as you're registered. So one of the things that has been coming out through research that we were doing months ago, and I think it's coming out through some of the stuff we did at York recently when we were up at Meanwood, and I think some of the guys on registered GPs, is that just because you register with a GP doesn't mean you have registered with that GP's online system either. There's two separate things there. Registering GP is one thing, registering with their system is another thing. And within that, there's a lack of consistency. If you were to go and register with a GP now, some may automatically register you for their online system. Some of them may make you do that separately, which is handled by making an appointment with a doctor who will do that for you. You know, you have to go and do that for 10 minutes. There's also other cases. You may have been with that doctor's surgery for a while, and you may not be aware that they do online bookings, or they may have brought that system online, and you need to go in and do that. So there's a thing here where we're trying to raise people's awareness of that you can go and use this online system. Fact that you click through and you present with a system like this, well, there you go. Right, so I've taken through the GP appointment stuff for now, and I'll hand over to Nick.
Thanks, Si. So,
Thanks, Nick.
Pleasure. So I'm Nick. I'm a product manager on Connecting to Services, working with Si and the rest of the team in Leeds. And I'm going to talk about how we're expanding the current pharmacy finder to incorporate more sort of care destinations, as it were. And in order to do that, I think it's really important that we go back to the user needs that we use to kick off this work right from the very beginning. And the specific user need that relates to this piece of work is the one that says, as a person with a symptom, I want to know where I can go for the right care that I need. And we explicitly started with pharmacies because we felt that was the low-hanging fruit, as it were, to be able to offer people the opportunity to go to a pharmacy rather than seeing the GP. But now we realise that we want to widen that, and we want to be able to satisfy the user needs such that we know that they are satisfied when they can make a decision based on appropriate options. And sometimes just offering a pharmacy isn't the appropriate options. There's more things and more places they can do and go to get the appropriate care that they need. So we need to take that into consideration. We want to know if the user knows if and how they can access an available option. So can we do something more about sharing how they might get to that destination, and whether that destination caters for things like wheelchair access, car parking spaces, that kind of stuff. What additional information do we need to provide in order to help the user make a decision about where they need to go for their care? We also want to know whether the user understands which available options offer the most appropriate help for their situation. So is it just a nurse on site, or is there a GP? The difference between the two. Do we need to spend some time doctoring the content to make that more explanatory in terms of the level of treatment they will receive? Additionally, we want to know whether the user feels reassured about going to an unfamiliar place, if it is better for them to go there. So what can we do to sort of put them at ease up front, so they may go to a place they've never been to before, nor their friends have ever been to before, but actually it will offer them the best solution to their current situation. And I think the last one is, if the user knows if they just turn up, or if they have to do something in advance, they'll get treatment. So what do we need to do to be able to give them information so they know what they have to do in order to be treated? So rather than just sort of turn up at a GP practice and not be seen straight away, can we provide some upfront information in terms of the length of time it will take for them to be seen, or how long they would expect to wait to get an appointment? So these are all considerations that we need to think about when we look at evolving into services. So what we did is we took an original piece of work, which was a spreadsheet that looked at simply mapping some of the symptoms and conditions that the team in London are looking at to destinations where a user or a patient might receive the appropriate treatment. And we went through this as a big mapping exercise last week, and we involved Dr. Rishi, and we sort of went through all the Choices content pages related to this to understand what Choices says on the matter about how it describes various destinations and the levels of care they provide. And we looked at mapping whether it was appropriate or not for the different symptoms and conditions. And we actually found it was more nuanced than we originally thought. And actually some symptoms, and I'll talk about this in a little bit more detail in a second, actually require different solutions depending on what those symptoms are. So for example, if we're looking at, originally we had warts, and you would expect to get different treatment from different places if they were standard warts or genital warts, for example. And you wouldn't necessarily go to a sexual health clinic if you had warts on your hands, for example. So it's all about understanding the nuances of different symptoms and exactly which destinations may provide the right level of treatment. So Sai just loosely touched on this, and this is the diagram we drew about. The other thing we need to be mindful of is the context in which people are receiving the information that we're passing on, and they might not necessarily always come from a symptoms and conditions page. And we need to make sure that when we provide information about a destination, it's also relevant if they came from a straight Google search. So we need to be massively aware of context and how we portray that alongside the results that we're showing. So sometimes when we know when someone's coming from a simple symptoms page, we can allude to that, and when we don't know where they're coming from, or it's a straight Google search, we also need to be mindful of that as well. So I'm going to do a quick demo of how we've sort of put this into action to begin with, and if I start from not that page. So if we were looking at warts, as I referred to before, and we go to the warts conditions page. This is the prototype, so it's loosely based on the symptoms and conditions page. It's purely an example at this minute in time. But at the minute, what we're thinking is actually the call to action could be a bit more nuanced, and it could make references to, are they genital warts or no warts? And actually, if they are genital warts, you might want to go to a sexual health clinic or see a GP. So there's a distinction between two different destinations there. And as Sai said before, the initial pattern we've come up with is actually allowing the user to select the type of service they want to see in the results. So if I was just going to put a location in, which would, for the benefit of this, be Leeds, and I'm actually interested in all the options, do a search, and it will return results based on the nearest one to me, but also on the conditions that I've selected, so both GP practices and sexual healthcare clinics. Now, the really interesting thing from our perspective is how do we serve up this data and how do we get access to this data? And we know that Pathways behind the scenes does some pretty neat stuff with triaging and looking at how services are being utilised, so how what the waiting times are like at various destinations. And what we're quite interested in is taking this and speaking to the Pathways team and looking at the directory of services in particular and looking at how we can use sort of almost real-time information to feed this page if that's the best way of presenting this data. It could be that we could just throw some destinations that we know about onto a page and serve that up, but we're interested in how sort of scientific can we get in terms of traffic management and how can we help people go to a destination where they can get the most appropriate treatment in the best possible time. So it's really to kickstart our debate and understand what data do we have within NHS Digital that we can draw on to make this as accurate as possible, and then look at how we roll that out across multiple symptoms. And that is it from me. So with that, I will press that button. Thanks very much.